Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to another rendition of Gods Unchained Market Watch. I'm your host, Juju, and today we'll be going over all of the notable market movements that have happened in the Gods Unchained economy these past couple of days. So overall, the market's in a consolidation phase, which is pretty good. We've been in a consolidation phase for about 2 weeks now. Cards like Demogorgon and Jason have been hovering around the 1K mark, which is nice. Jason's actually bouncing back from hitting as low as like 990 all the way to 1370, so that's very healthy. Yeah, overall, this is still a great time to buy, in my opinion. Prices are still being found, but of course, there have been buyouts that have been happening over the weekend, and we'll be going over that pretty soon. Other than that, hope you guys had a great weekend ranked. I know I did. I went 1925. Could have done better, honestly. Played a little sloppy towards the end because I was just tired, but I did pretty well. Won against Fake Muse. If you follow him on his YouTube channel, like, that was pretty fun. I wish I got to record the game though, because it was really fun. Went all the way down to Fatigue. I was playing Border White Death. He was playing Controlled Deception, and there's some pretty high level gameplay. Very nice to see. But anyways, Fake Muse, if you're watching this, GG, great playing you, man. Sweet. So we'll go ahead and start with our death cards. So first up, we have Sulfuric Rain. This is your 1 mana spell. Each creature gets burn +2 and afterlife draw a card. This card is really good in my opinion. When paired with Siren of the Grave, it's basically a 2-card combo for 2 mana that basically it's an AoE effect pretty much, because it'll proc Siren of the Grave's effect, force your opponent's board to go to sleep, and then they're forced to eat the 2 damage and burn without doing anything. So it's really good in my opinion. Drawing a card is also good. Serves as a way for the board wipe death player or just a death deck in general to cycle through their cards, which is nice. And it in matchups against control decks, it can force your opponent to be behind in fatigue, so that's always good. We did see a movement from all the way from 131 to 205, so that's about $70. This card has been pretty good for a while. We've been talking about this in the channel too. And there are more opportunities like this too. If you see a metagame card that's at a dip right now, chances are it'll go back up eventually. But yeah, Sulfuric Rain, 130 to 200. Very good card in my opinion, justified with the spike. Amazon Hearteater. Okay, so this one's interesting. It's a 5 mana 4/4. Roar, destroy a creature with 3 health or less. If you control another Amazon, heal your god for the destroyed creature's health. So this is the only Amazon in death decks, or in the death class. But I mean, you could pair it out with like any of the neutral Amazons. So I guess that's okay. It's a Blight Bomb. It's built in its effects, and you can also heal, which is good. I don't like the stat line, however. 5 mana for 4/4 in stats feels pretty weak in a game like Gods Unchained. In Hearthstone, it'd be okay, but there are just too many cheap spells that do 4 damage. So this card won't be staying on the board for long. But we did see a buyout happen around January 12th. 38 copies were bought at an average price of $13.27. Spiked all the way to, wow, 21, and is consolidating around the 17 mark. The card is pretty good, in my opinion. The card is all right, in my opinion. Sorry, not pretty good. I don't know if this is justified or not. Maybe if you know, Gods Unchained released more Amazon support for the death class, or even just like neutral Amazons, I could see this working, but for now it's only speculation. Next up, we have a spike for Sacred Lore. Deal 1 damage to your god, add 3 random runes to your hand. This card costs 3 mana. 3 mana for 3 cards is pretty good, especially if they're runes. Runes are generally pretty decent in my opinion. It's Rune of Power, which is always good. The Drawing Rune, the Buff Rune that turns your minions into gives your minions like 2/2 and frontline, also very good. And the Healing Rune too. I could see this card being playable in my opinion, but I haven't seen it in meta decks. So anyways, it spiked all the way from $5 to $8, $9. Wow. And then it's consolidating around the 732. Definitely a buyout in my opinion. Skull Scepter. All right. 2 mana relic. After one of your creatures die, deal 1 damage to your opponent's god. I like this card. One durability is also a hindrance, but honestly, it does a lot of damage. Especially if you're running like a swarm deck, like a zombie deck or anything like that. Also, heal is pretty weak in this game, in my opinion. Like, the only cards that heal are the ones with leech, and maybe if you get like a Rune of Healing or something like that from the Sanctum. But other than that, unless you're running Demogorgons in your deck, your opponent most likely won't have that much heal, so burn damage or chip damage would be very beneficial, especially if you're playing like an aggro deck that swarms. Jumped from 420 all the way to, wow, 626. It's consolidating back down to 450, however, so I think the card is good. I think the price is fair at 450. I'm not too sure if it's fair at like 7 or 6, but I mean, it's a decent card, especially if you're running like a zombie swarm deck and you're not running Necroceptor. But let's be real, you have to run Necroceptor in zombie decks. But yeah, next card. Oh, Nether's Advocate. Okay, this one's interesting. This one's a 2 mana 1/1 summon a 3/2 experimental outcome when it dies. Decent card in my opinion. Combos well with the Blood Ritual God Power. We did see it climb all the way from like $1 to $1.70, which is pretty significant, you know. Even though it's just 70 cents, it's like almost it almost doubled in price. I think the card is okay in my opinion. There's a similar card like this in Hearthstone a while back for the Hunter class. I forgot the name of it, but anyways, 2 mana for basically 4/3 worth of stats is pretty decent. And if you can combo it off with like, I don't know, Possessed. What's that card? The 2 mana 1/1 with Soulless that destroys a minion, activates its afterlife, and then gives it 2/2 when it dies. Anyways, it's a decent card in my opinion. Very deep, potent in free to play decks. Even though this isn't a free to play card, now very potent in like aggro decks can be. But yeah, not much to say there. Okay, next up we have Soul Charlatan. 3 mana 3/4. Give one of your creatures without an afterlife. Summon a 3/2 experimental outcome. Okay, so this card would be good if it didn't have an ability. And the reason why this ability is bad is because it's not allowed to attack. Right? So 3 mana 3/4, decent stat line for a 3 mana minion. However, you won't be using this attack stat at all because of the nature of ability creatures. And I mean, it can work. It can definitely work. Like, you can play this card. You have to wait a turn though, which is kind of like a detriment to the effect as well. But I mean, if you can set this up, it's a free 3/2 every turn, which is nice. We did see a buyout around January 8th, and then just copies just kept getting bought. We do see a price peak at like 139. Now it's at like 157, which is nice. I don't know why Token Trove's been doing this, but just ignore this 0. Cool. So moving on to the deception cards. First up, we have Hierophant Selenus. Roar. Your other creatures gain whenever this creature damages an opponent's god. Copy a random card in your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. It's a 5 mana 4/3. But you're obviously not playing it for the body. You're playing it for the roar. I think it has a lot of potential. Definitely could be like a refill card for aggro deception decks. Think of it. I think the ideal situation to play this card would probably be when you don't have any cards in hand, but you have a full board. Play this card on turn 5. Or 4 if you have a bag of tricks. Then have your minions attack. Take cards from your opponent deck and hopefully refill your hand with more resources that are useful. Card is a legendary from the Trial of the Gods set. It spiked all the way from 31 to 42. So that's a $10 price hike, which is not bad for a legendary card. Yeah, not much to say here. The only reason why I don't like it is Stat line is kind of horrible, especially at 3 health for a 5 mana card. Trades well with like 2 mana cards. It results in a loss of tempo. But if you can set up situations where you have a full board, you can just slap this baby down and have your minions attack to refill your hand. I think that's okay. Next up, we have Dreamstalker. Okay, this is a 5 mana 2/3. Roar, destroy all sleeping creatures. Okay, this card would be really good if it wasn't at 5 mana. Because I think the stat line is okay, but it has to combo with other sleeping effects to make it work. Man, if this card was like at 2 mana, you could play this on 9 mana with Demogorgon and clear the board. Anyways, but I do see it seeing play, especially in Deception decks that, have a reliable way of dealing with sleep. Like you can run Sleep Dart or any other sleep cards. I think that 2 mana, or was it 3 mana? The 2/2 that makes the minion sleep every turn, it synergizes well with this card as well. I just don't like the stat line. 2/3 for 5 mana is very weak, in my opinion. But we did see a spike. 146 all the way to 257. Dang, that's a whole $1. Amazing. Next up, we have Trial of the Shadows. Okay, we did see a mini buyout here. It's a 7 mana spell. Fill your side of the board with Shadow of Lethanons. Okay, and Shadow of Lethanons are the 1 mana 1/1 that deal 1 damage to your opponent every turn, and at the end of the turn, they get hidden. Very annoying card to deal with if you don't have AoE, so I could see that why this card makes sense in the price hike. However, the only caveat about this is you play this card at 7 mana, which is turn 9, and at that point in the game, your opponent should have access to their AoE removal if they're running it. If not, they should have access to a Valka's Presence or anything like that from the Sanctum. Very vulnerable card in my opinion. Feels bad when you just play this card and your opponent plays like I don't know, what's that 2 mana spell that deals 1 damage to all of your opponent's minions? Like that card. Yeah, just feels bad. So I don't know if it's worth the buyout, but could see play. Next up, we have Hooded Figure. This is a 5 mana 6/3 backline flank hidden. Okay, so this card is, I usually wouldn't like the 3 health on a 5 mana minion, but because it has hidden, I guess it's okay. We do see a price hike from 50 cents all the way to 88. Ooh, pretty crazy, 30 cents, but it's alright. It's not good, it's not bad, but backline flank hidden makes it a pretty interesting card, especially backline and hidden. Makes it difficult to deal with, or at least it'll ensure staying on board, unless your opponent has like AoE to deal with this. But yeah, the fact that it has hidden means it's going to stay on board for at least 1 turn, so you'll be able to get 1 attack in most of the time. 6 damage or 6 strength is also a pretty decent stat line for 5 mana in my opinion, so I'll let the 3 health slide. Next up, we have a little spike on the Shackled Acolyte. It's consolidating back down to 40 cents. Most expensive you can buy it, or cheapest you can buy it, is 62. 2 mana 2/2 order 3. When this creature loses order, give it 2/2. It's a 2 mana 4/4. Unless your opponent wants to deal with it like before it gets to buff, which is, in my opinion, pretty okay. You get to force your opponent to waste their removal on this card, unless they want to just deal with a 4/4. Order 3 means they don't get the buff until your opponent's turn, however, which, yeah. Typically with cards like this, you'd want it to be like an even number of order, so that you can, so that it can get the buff at the beginning of your turn versus the beginning of your opponent's. But anyways, it's a decent card. I could see this card will definitely see play in order decks if they get more support or become viable. Next up, we have Patient Pickpocket. This is a 1 mana 1/3 order 3 flank. When this creature loses order, add a copy of a random card in your opponent's hand to your hand. Okay, this card can be pretty good in my opinion, especially against decks that run powerful cards like Board Wipe Death or Control War. Very fun card. You can end up stealing a lot of key ingredients to your opponent's decks or threats, which I think it's decent. You know, it would definitely be played in an order deck in my opinion. But yeah, it spiked all the way to 35 and then went back down to 11 cents. Okay, before we move on, I'm just gonna check my audio real quick. Okay, it's working great. My worst fear is during one of these videos, my audio just goes out and I have to restart the whole dang thing. That's happened to me before. Anyways, moving on to light cards. We have Parthene Shieldmate. This is a 3-mana 3/3 frontline. After this creature is healed, give it 1 health. Give the ward to the chosen one with its roar effect. It's also an Olympian, so Olympian support works here. It did experience a buyout on the 15th. 28 copies were bought at an average price of $8.57. In my opinion, I think this card is okay, but it's not busted. Needs some time to set up, and 3-mana 3/3 for 3 mana feels very underwhelming in my opinion. Trades well with 2 mana spells or 1 mana cards that deal 2 damage and god power. So yeah, I'm not sure, but a buyout happened and the price did spike. Cheapest you can find it now is $9. Cool, moving on to Field Medic. This is your 1 mana 2/2 Afterlife. Add 2 injured soldiers to your void. It's an Olympian. This would probably see play in an Olympian deck, especially with those Olympian decks that need Olympians in your void. Or just cards in your void, in my opinion. It did experience a buyout on the 14th. 20 copies were bought at an average price of $8.58. And it spiked all the way from, all the way to $9.48. Cheapest you can buy it now is $8.86 though, so we do see a little bit of consolidation here. Okay, next up we have Fated Arrival. This is a 3-mana spell. Draw the chosen one from your deck, give it ward in frontline. I think this card is a must include in chosen one decks, so there is some potential here. We do see a little bit of price hike all the way from 79 cents at a low point to 140, so it doubled in price. Cheapest you can find it now is 143, and that's a big wall. 23 copies at 143. I think it's a must include in the chosen one decks. We'll just have to wait and see until we get support for that archetype, because right now the chosen one archetype is pretty weak in my opinion. Okay, next up we have Burden of Proof. This is your 3-mana spell. Draw a card for each of your creatures with strength 2. Went from 63 cents all the way to 91 cents. Ooh, 30 cents, big deal. But we do see an increased amount of buying here, and then some activity even the week prior. I think this card is okay in my opinion. It's a little situational for me. I know one of Light's things is to have creatures with strength 2, multiple creatures. That's why CERN went from a 4/5 to a 2/5. And we have a whole bunch of other creatures that exemplify that within the god class. However, yeah, it's just too conditional. If you can get this off, however, it is value. You're playing 3 mana to get. If you can get this off with a board of two strength creatures, it's paying for itself already, because 3 mana for 2 cards in Gods Unchained is pretty respectable. If you can get more than that, that's great. Yeah, I just it's conditional for me. I don't usually like leaning towards conditional effects, because sometimes they won't be as reliable to use. Cool. Excommunicate saw a little bit of a spike. I'm not sure if this was because people are just manipulating the market, but anyways, 5 mana. Pull an enemy creature from the board to your bottom of your opponent's deck, gain 7 favor. It doesn't destroy, but it also puts a threat at the bottom of your opponent's deck, which is fine, especially if you're not expecting to reach fatigue. It's pretty good spot removal in my opinion. It's just really expensive at 5 mana. Gaining the 7 favor part, I don't really care about. It can be useful at times, but honestly, it doesn't affect the board state too much. Cool. Next up, we're going to go to the Magic cards. I'm just going to take a sip of water real quick. So, First up, we have Form of Unity. This is your 3-mana spell. Deal 1 damage to a character for each of your creatures on board. If you control 5 or more creatures, deal 9 damage instead. Honestly, if you can hit this 9 damage condition reliably in the deck you run, this is pretty good value. 3 mana for 9 damage is pretty insane in my opinion. We saw a spike from $10 all the way to $13. So the cheapest copy you can buy right now is $12.68. Okay, Chain Flip. This is your 3-mana spell. Deal 10 damage to target enemy creature. At the end of the turn, your opponent summons a random creature from their void. Yeah, not much to say here. It spiked all the way from like $3 to $7, which is kind of insane in my opinion. The card isn't that great. Yeah, you're dealing 10 damage to a target enemy creature, but they get to summon a creature from their void, so you're essentially not netting any card advantage here, and you're spending mana. You can high roll, of course, and have them resummon like a totally useless creature, but worst case scenario, you can low roll and summon like kill one of their threats and then summon another threat to deal with. So it doesn't make sense in my opinion why this price hike happened. Maybe I'm missing something here. I guess if it didn't have the drawback, this would make sense because 3 damage or 10 damage is a lot for 3 mana. But yeah, I don't know. We did see a buyout here. Spiked all the way. We're seeing a consolidation around the $6 mark, which is nice, and it keeps going down. So we'll see where it ends up. But other than that, yeah. Cool. Okay. Antimian's Reflection. This is your 5-mana 5/5 roar. This creature gains Blitz. If any enemy creature has Blitz, repeat for God Blitz, Deadly, Flank, Twin Strike, Regen, Ward, and Protected. Honestly, I like this card. 5-mana 5/5 is a decent body for 5 mana. The roar is the one that intrigues me. It is situational though, because it relies on your opponent having minions that have those keywords. But I mean, I feel like those situations are very common, especially if you're playing against war, or if you're running into a lot of classes like war, or even nature too, because of the regen, protected, ward. Yeah, it's very common to run into classes like this. Like it's very flexible. In my opinion, could work. I kind of like the card actually. There's some potential there. We did see a price jump all the way from 122 to 243, so it doubled in price. But yeah, decent card in my opinion. All right, Arcane Burst. This is a 7-mana spell. Deal 1 damage to a character for each spell that costs 3 or less in your void, up to a maximum of 10 damage. This could... I mean, honestly, this could be a finisher card too. It's kind of a bummer that it puts a cap at 10 damage though, because you're essentially waiting 9 turns to deal 10 damage. There are better burn cards, in my opinion. The 6-mana burn cards like Epiphany or Asterisk Explosion. You can also do the 4-mana burn cards like Worm Breath, which is getting buffed to 6 damage. So I don't know. I think there are better options at the burn spot for Magic decks, but I could see this being an option if you can't afford any of the other options. But I mean, all the other options are in the core set, so you should be able to like get them. They're not too hard to get. But we did see a price spike from like 140 all the way to 227. Consolidating down to the $2 range, so we'll see where that goes. All right, so we're getting another buyout for Heka's Enchantress. I covered this card last week. I think it's not that good. It's a 1-mana 1/2 Anubian 4/C2. Doesn't really do anything for you, except set you up for your next turn, which I guess can be good, especially if they're playing this on turn 1. But two health stat line for 1 strength is not too impressive in my opinion. But yeah, it jumped. It spiked back up to 150, went back down to $1, and then spiked back up again to 150. Right now, it's hovering around that mark. We'll see if we see any action from there. Cool. Next up, we have Endow Wings. Give a friendly creature ward, and at the end of your turn, add a copy of a random card from your opponent's hand. So I like the effect a random copy of a random card from your opponent's hand. It scouts for you, which is nice, which means the card that you get, you'll know it'll be in your opponent's hand. So if you get like an Apocalypse Now, you'll be able to like understand that your opponent has that in hand. So that could be useful. The fact that you're giving the creature ward means your opponent will have to expend additional resources unless they trade, unless they can trade with a minion. So that's pretty decent in my opinion. It can replace itself definitely. 4 mana is a little pricey, but I could see this being a thing in like control decks. Yeah, it's an okay card. There's some potential here for sure, especially in the control matchups where no player wants to do anything and it's a slower tempo of a game. Against aggro, you'd probably have a little bit harder of a time playing this card because, yeah, this card is a setup card. It needs some time to set up. But we see a price spike from 95 all the way to 145, and still at that price range. It's at 143 right now. Cool. Next up, we have Spellbound Goblin. This is your 4 mana 3/3 with Spell Boost 1. Roar, give -5 durability to your opponent's relic. That's pretty good in my opinion, especially with all the like infinite relics that are running around right now in the game. Deals and Spell Boost is pretty useful in Magic right now, in my opinion, because there's just so many efficient removal spells. We do see a price spike from 83 cents all the way to $2. It's consolidating around the 162 mark right now. So we'll see if we continue to see it go up in price. Okay, we saw a little spike from Manitoad. Went from like 40 cents to $1 back down to 50 cents. The card is pretty good. It's not a must include in ramp decks, but it's definitely a you have to think about including this card. Yeah, 3 mana 2/1. It's not that it's a weak stat line, but honestly, you're not playing it for the 3 mana. You're playing it so that you can unlock an additional mana lock. The only thing about this is it's an Afterlife versus a Roar, and the reason why that's important in ramp decks is because you typically want to ramp as fast as possible. So if you play this card, you're not ramping right away, you're ramping for the next turn. But anyways, I digress. That's like a whole nother topic. I think ramp decks are really fun. They're actually one of my favorite archetypes. I played a lot of ramp druid in Hearthstone, so I kind of understand how the deck wants to operate. But anyways, this card is good. It's a must. It's definitely a. If you need more ramp in your deck, you run this card. This is probably like one of the top 4 ramp cards in the game. Cool. Next up, we have Rod of Rodents. This is your 3 mana 1/2 relic. After you cast a spell that costs 3 or less, summon a 1/1 rat. Okay, so this card also has a lot of potential in my opinion, just because of the sheer nature of like cheap mana cost spells that the Magic class has that are useful. Works really well with Form of Unity. I think it's Form of Unity, the one that deals 9 damage when you have 5 or more minions. There's some synergy there with this card. It's a lot of infinite value, really, if you think about it. Summoning a 1/1 for each spell that you have, and if you're playing like a deck that runs the 1 mana 1 cards that, or 1 mana cards that let you draw a card, like it's going off the top of my head right now, but there's so many cards that do that. I could totally see like this card being played for sure. It has a lot of potential. If Magic gets like a buff or like a board buff card where you summon it, or maybe you play it, it buffs all the minions on the field, or all your minions on the field, this card will definitely see a lot more play. Cool. So moving on to nature. For nature, we have Photogenesis. 7 mana spell, add 4 random nature cards to your hand, refresh 6 mana. I kind of like this card. There's a lot of potential here, in my opinion. It's just so slow at 7 mana. Because, yeah, of the way mana works in Gods Unchained, you're waiting at least 8 turns to play this card. However, it sounds like it'd be a really potent refill effect. So if you're running low on resources and you have this card, Play this card, get 4 random nature cards. On top of that, you refresh 6 mana. So you're almost guaranteed to be able to play the cards that you get from this card, which is nice. We did see a buyout here. Dang, bought out at $36, 14 copies, $35 at an average of 46 copies, spiked all the way to $62.92, and now is back at $55.05. Still around that price range. Cheapest you can get right now is $55.38. It also has a lot going for it because it's a Genesis set card and because it's an epic. So, I mean, if a slower nature deck comes into play or emerges as a metagame contender, then we can totally see this card seeing play. Cool. Next up, we have Natural Selection. This is your 2 mana spell. Target friendly creature gains an extra attack this turn and attacks a random enemy creature. Add a random nature card to your hand. Man, that's a lot of text. So, target friendly creature gains an extra attack this turn and attacks a random enemy creature. Good. That's pretty good in my opinion. If you use this if you use this on a Confused Jaguar, for example, Confused Jaguar can trade with another minion, then you can play this card and trade with another minion. That'll net you a 2-for-2 in terms of card advantage. But then you also get to add a random nature card to your hand, so this card replaces itself. So that's pretty good in terms of card advantage. It is pretty situational in the fact that you need a minion on board, so this card has some conditions to be useful, but other than that, I think it's an okay card. For the price hike, we saw it at $5.98, almost $6, and it spiked all the way to $11, which is pretty interesting in my opinion. Cheapest you can buy it for is $9.88. Yeah, I don't know why Token Trove is doing this, but it's fine. It's our $9.83. Wow, it just changed in front of me. That's crazy. But yeah, so it's an okay card. Could see play, but I don't think it's like a must include in nature decks. Okay, this card, Fertility Idol. 7 mana, 0/6 Amazon. At the end of your turn, summon a copy of another random friendly creature. Okay, so I think this card is okay. I don't know if it. I don't like it though. Like, I personally wouldn't play it because 7 mana is really expensive. The body isn't good, but at least at the end of your turn, you get to summon a copy of another random friendly creature, so that's nice, especially in like big beast nature. If you end up with a board full of like you can end up with a board full of giant pangolins, and that's hilarious in itself. But yeah, I mean, I can see it being played, but it's just too expensive of a mana cost to warrant like playing this in a deck. I could see it seeing play, however. I don't know if it'd be optimal though. But yeah, anyways, 44 copies were bought an average of 253, and yeah, we're seeing a spike all the way to 348. Cheapest you can buy it now is 318, which isn't bad. We're seeing a consolidation around that level. Do I think it's busted? No. Do I see potential? Yeah. It's decent. Cool. So moving on to the war cards, we have 5 mana 3/5 returned Einherjar. That's a fun thing to say. Einherjar. Anyways, when this creature attacks, give a random other friendly creature 2/1. If it is a Viking, give it 3/1 instead. Okay, so this card is a little slow because the condition is you need to attack. To activate effect, you need to attack, which means you have to. It has to stay on the board for 1 turn in order to be effective. It's a Viking, so it gets Viking support, which is nice. I don't have much to say about the card. I don't think it's good, but I also don't think it's bad. There are definitely better options at the 5 mana slot, though, especially for decks like war decks. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about this card. But we do see a buyout happen here. At 20 copies were bought an average price of $5.74. We are seeing the cheapest copy at $6.59 right now, so it's still going up. Only time will tell if this buyout will pay off. Cool. Okay, Strength in Numbers is an interesting card. 7 mana. Add 4 random war creatures to your hand and give 2/2 to them. It's pretty good value in my opinion. This could see play, especially in slower like control war decks. Man, if you hit like any minion with blitz, you'd get instant value. If you hit a legendary minion, you get good value. The 2/2 buff is pretty significant in my opinion, and you're getting 8/8, or you're getting that 4 times. So you're getting 8/8 worth of stats regardless. Lots of activity here. We do see a price spike happen from all the way from $3 to like $6.91, and the cheapest copy you can buy it of is $7.68. So that's an interesting buy. It's a pretty good card in slow control decks, especially if you want to add more threats to your board. It could even be a mid-range thing too, like a late mid-range war deck could run this card. And yeah, but 7 mana is pretty pricey. Cool. Next up we have, oh man, Hyxosian Chariot. There you go. Cool. I had to like stop there real quick because you don't see the spelling like that usually. But it's a 3 mana 2/1 with Blitz, Flank, and Protected. It's an Anubian, so it gets Anubian support. We did see a buyout happen here. 41 copies were bought at an average price of $237. Spiked all the way to $335 and is consolidating now at the $239 mark. Cheapest you can buy it at is $251, which is okay. I think this card is decent. Blitz and Protected is always a good combination in my opinion. The fact that it has 1 health though means it's probably not going to survive the next turn. But it also has Flank, which is nice. So you can, if you can attack, you can summon this card, attack with another minion, proc the flank, and then have it attack anything. Especially if your opponent has creatures from backline or that have backline, can be decent. There might be better options at the 3 mana spot though. So, but the fact that it's a Genesis card could mean it's okay. I think it's an alright buy. Okay, next up we have Trial of the Innocents. 6 mana spell. At the end of your turn, double the strength of each of your creatures and give them Afterlife. Deal damage equal to this creature's strength. Split randomly among all enemy creatures. So this card can be really good. Doubling your minion's strength is really powerful. This can be a really powerful finisher in my opinion. And also they get the Afterlife, which is crazy. Oh, I guess. Okay, I see. The only drawback is the effect activates at the end of your turn, so you're not getting it immediately. This would be broken if this happened immediately, but the fact that it's at the end of the turn, it's all right. It's all right in my opinion. But that effect is pretty good. You get to double the strength of your opponent's creatures. The only downside, or you get to double your strength of your own creatures. The only downside to this is your opponent has the opportunity to kill them off before they can finish you off. But decent card. It was bought out, and it spiked all the way from $2 to $7.59. The cheapest you can buy it at is $3 right now. So it's decent in my opinion. I think, yeah, it'd be more broken if it was you got the effect immediately and not at the end of your turn. Cool. Next up we have Hurl Weapon. 1 mana spell, destroy a relic and deal its damage +3 to target creature. This card is okay in my opinion. It's 1 damage removal and you get to, you sacrifice your relic for it. So you better be able to, like, I don't know. It's a -2 or -1 in card advantage because you're spending this card and you're spending your relic to hopefully kill a creature, right? I don't know. I don't think it's like great, but it could see play, especially in relic decks. It spiked all the way from 70 cents to 172, so increased by $1. And it's staying at that level actually, so that's pretty interesting. Cool. Okay, so now we're moving on to the neutral minions. Something that I didn't cover was Jason. Jason is currently bouncing back from like the 1,000 all the way to like 1,300. So that's a good sign that players or competitive players are getting into the game, which is nice. But yeah, moving on, we have That Which Aches. I like this card. It's a 6 mana 3/7 Nether. After you play a card, summon a 3/1 Aching Disciple with Roar. Draw a card. Afterlife. Shuffle this creature into your deck. I play this card in Board Wipe Death. You can play this card in any control deck. If you are expecting a matchup that goes into Fatigue, this card is probably one of the best anti-Fatigue cards out there besides Jason, because you're never going to run into Fatigue, especially if you get this off and you get at least 2 or 3 procs, you should be fine. But yeah, anyways, so we see a spike happen from 161 all the way to 228, which is, that's wow. 232 is the cheapest you can buy this card. I think it's a good card. Definitely something to have if you plan on being a competitive player, because yeah, there are going to be some metagames where, control decks are super dominant, and not just one control deck, but multiple. Honestly, yeah, even if it's just one control deck, but like this card is really good in control deck mirror matches, in my opinion. So pick this up while you can. Not financial advice. Next up, we have Peculiar Spellworm. This is your 1 mana 2/6 dragon. Roar. Your opponent randomly pulls a spell from their deck, reduces the cost of the spell to 1. Okay, so this card is good depending on the matchup. So 1 mana 2/6 is a great stat line for a 1 mana minion. It's actually like an impeccable stat line, and the fact that it doesn't have a drawback like Pyramid Warden or Wild Boar where it's confused means that it's okay. However, the drawback of having your opponent pull a spell from their deck and reduce that cost of the spell to 1 is a little bit of a red flag to me. And the reason why I say this card is good depending on the matchup is because against decks that run multiple spells that are cheap and the discount doesn't do much, like for example a tempo magic deck, for example, right? This card is okay, because there's a chance that your opponent can pull like a 1 mana spell from their deck and it doesn't really change anything, right? But if you play against a deck like Board Wipe Death or Control War, or even Frenzy, some versions of Frenzy Aggro War that runs Soul Survivor, that can be a problem, because then you're discounting their really expensive spell to 1 mana in exchange for just summoning like a 2/6, and that feels bad. So do what you will with that information. We do see a buyout happen here. 16 copies were bought at an average price of 102. Yeah, I don't think the card is game breaking. However, it's a cool looking card though. I think the artwork is fire. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, on to the next card. Next up, we have Influential Incubus. This is your 3 mana 2/1 Roar. For every 3 Nethers in your deck, this creature gets 1 health and deals 1 damage to both gods. Okay. I think this card has potential, because I think Nether is a really strong archetype within Gods Unchained, and there is room for this card in Nether decks. It's better the earlier you draw it though, because later on in the game you won't have that many Nethers, so you summon this card and it's kind of underwhelming, right? And for this stat line to be good, see, it's 3 mana, so anything above, you'd want anything above 4 health so that it doesn't trade perfectly with 2 mana removal cards. So what's that? If you want it to have 5 health, for every 3 Nethers in your deck, this creature gets +1 health. So you'd want 12 Nethers in your deck by the time you play this card for it to at least be competitive at its mana slot, right? But I digress. We do see a buyout happen, or we do see a price hike, not a buyout. Sorry, it went from $40 all the way to like 79. It's consolidating back down to like the 60 mark. Yeah, I think the card has a lot of potential for sure. The fact that it's a Genesis set card and it's an epic, it warrants the price in my opinion. Only time will tell if this card becomes amazing or not amazing. Cool. Next up, we have the Black Argo. We do see a buyout here. 25 copies were bought at an average price of $42.52. This card is a 5 mana minion, 4/6 flank. Each other friendly Olympian gets 1 strength and flank. 5 mana is a decent mana cost. The stat line is pretty decent in my opinion. 4/6. And it can buff your other minions, which is nice. It also has flank, and it's an Olympian. It gets Olympian support. I don't know if I'd buy. I don't know if I'd buy 25 copies at an average price of $42.52, especially with this volume. Look at this. Like this, sometimes like 1 to 3 copies are bought every day. 0 to 3 copies are bought every day, versus excluding Christmas, the day after Christmas, and January 15th, whenever that was, and December 20th, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think the card is game breaking. It just feels underwhelming to me, like the effect at least. And Olympians aren't that great of an archetype right now, unless I'm missing something. But yeah, I don't know. Could be good, but I don't see it being like crazy good. Cool. Next up, we have Friendly Mimic. This is your 4 mana 2/2. Roar, add a copy of a friendly creature to your hand. Could be good in combo decks that, revolve around like a certain creature. Like I could totally see this card being used for, I think it's Osiris, the 3 mana 3/4 light card. Yeah. You basically get a buffed Osiris, play it, play this card, add a copy of that Osiris into your hand, and then have another threat that you can use later on. Could be good, has some potential. 2/2 feels very weak for a 4 mana card, however, so you're pretty much only using this card for the roar effect. But we did see a price spike, went from $12 all the way to $19, consolidating around the $16 range. Cheapest you could buy it for right now is $15.99. Ooh, okay. So next up we have Wind Up Roller. This is your 2 mana 3/2. You and your opponent draw a card. Atlantean, it's Genesis set. It's a rare. It spiked all the way from $10 to $21.63. Wow. Now it's hovering around that $11 mark. Right now the cheapest you can buy it for is $13.66 though. So this card has seen play in Board Wipe Death. The reason why Board Wipe Death likes this card is because it allows the Board Wipe Death player, to cycle while also not falling behind in fatigue to their opponent, right? And the Board Wipe Death player typically wants to reach fatigue, because that's where their best game state is. Anyways, yeah, this card. I mean, I could see why the price spike happened. To be fair. But it's the fact that it went down means there aren't that many buyers that are interested in this card right now, but could see play in other decks. This card could see play in other decks as well. Next up, we have Hollow Pillager. This is your 3 mana 2/1 Viking. Whenever an enemy creature dies, add a random anim, enchanted relic, or rune to your hand. Well, this is an interesting card. Nets you advantage when you kill an enemy creature, so that's good. We did see a price spike happen from $4 all the way to $11.87. It's going back down to $4.82 though. So we did see. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a buyout, but I don't know. It's very interesting. Cheapest you can find it at is $7.57. Do I like the card? No. I don't like it because it has 1 health. And that just makes it really easy for your opponent to deal with. You're essentially playing this card when you can convert its effect. So you'll need to have a minion on board already. It's not very good as a developmental like card if you're still trying to fight for board, because yeah, 1 mana or 1 health at 3 mana, it's pretty weak. Cool. Next up we have Mindful Orc. This is a 3 mana 2/4. Roar. If this is your only creature on the board, it gets 2 health. This card can be decent for sure, especially in slower control decks where you're not looking to play minions in the first 2 turns. Let's see here. 390 spiked to 962. Damn. 962. That's consolidating around the 473 mark. I think it has potential for sure. There will be space for this card in certain decks. Is it game breaking? No, but it's decent for sure, especially if you can proc this. Get this effect reliably. Cool. Next up we have Foolhardy Berserker. This is your 2 mana 3/2 Viking. After this creature deals damage, give a random other friendly Viking 2 strength. This card can be very good in my opinion. I just think of Boil Blood Outlaw, and this card can definitely complement, or this card gives me Boil Blood Outlaw vibes. The fact that it's 2 mana at 2 health though makes it very fragile, which I understand, but I mean, just imagine turn 1 opening up Enduring Shield, turn 2 summoning this card and proccing the shield to give this card protected. I could see that being a thing. Has some potential here, especially in Viking decks. I won't say... Oh, sorry, I misread that. Give a random other friendly Viking. Dang. That'd be busted if it could give 2 strength to itself. Yeah, this card is alright. It's conditional because you need another Viking on board. It's 2 health doesn't make it very resilient to removal either. So it's a very slim chance that this card will survive to the next turn. But I mean, it could be good. You never know. Maybe there's like some kind of broken Viking deck that we haven't discovered yet, and this card is a key piece. So you never know with this card. Anyways, it'll be it jumped from $3 all the way to $5.29, consolidating around the $3.76 mark. Not bad. Cool. We have Golem Excavator next. This is your 7 mana 6/7 creature, Atlantean. After your opponent plays a spell, summon a random anim. We did see a price hike all the way from 182 to 240, and it's climbing. The cheapest you can buy this at is at 280 right now. I think the card is okay. 7 mana feels super slow. 6/7 doesn't feel like it's worth the stat line. I want if I'm playing a 7 mana card, I want 9 turns worth of stats, and 6/7 doesn't feel like 9 turns. It is a conditional effect because it's dependent on your opponent playing a card. So if I had this card played against me, I'd try to limit that as much as possible. Maybe possibly trade in minions before I play my spells. So yeah, but it does have potential. Like, this is an anti-magic card for sure. So you can totally see this in play. Like in competitive play, if we use sideboards, this would be a sideboard card in my opinion. Is it good? I wouldn't run it, if that makes sense. So that's my opinion on if it's good or not. But yeah, anyways, next card. Stun Gun Construct. 4 mana 4/3. Roar, confuse an enemy creature. It's an Atlantean. Price hiked all the way from 169 to 273. I don't like the card because of the 3 health at the 4 mana cost. Confuse an enemy creature doesn't feel too disruptive in my opinion, because confuse is a 50-50. So I don't know. And for a strength, this doesn't feel strong for a 4 mana card. Ooh, next up we have The Trial Begins. This is your 3 mana spell. Choose a creature in your deck that matches your god's domain, pull it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. Yeah, this card's very good. We saw the spike from 119 all the way to 260, and now it's slowly coming down to this $2 mark here. But the reason why this card is good is you get to search out any creature from your God's domain that exists in your deck. And that's super good. Of course, you're spending 3 mana for it. I don't know if 3 mana is worth it. No, yeah, 3 mana is worth it for sure. But yeah, it's super important, especially in most decks. It's super important to find creatures, and the Trial Begins gets you a creature that you need at that very moment. So in Board Wipe Death, you play this card, you get your Siren of the Grave, or if you need to draw, you get your Burrowing Scarab, or Vrock, right? Or you can play this card and net your Fanatic of Kanoom to ramp. So good in so many different situations, and that's just death, right? In Magic, you get to find, what's an important card in Magic? You get to find your Oni Spell Sword. God, talking's hard. In Nature, you get to find that giant pangolin that you've been looking for, right? In War, you get to find more threats, like maybe an Audi, or maybe if you're looking for a creature with God Blitz or Blitz, so many different. This card is so versatile in so many decks. So I could see the price spike. I'm surprised it's not more expensive, but I digress. Next card. Nether Nanny. Okay, this is your 4 mana 4/4. Whenever this creature survives damage, summon a 1/1 Impling. It also has a Nether tag. This card can be really good in Nether decks, in my opinion. Yeah. The fact, however, okay, it has to survive damage. It's 4 mana, and it only has 4 health, right? So when you play this card, you have to make sure that you can proc its effect right away using some sort of like damaging card on it, or like a Just a Nibble. Just a Nibble would be a pretty good synergy with this. Or B, like you have to pray that your opponent doesn't have removal to do with this card so that you can set up for next turn. So this card takes a little bit of setup to play, but summoning an Impling in another deck is pretty good in my opinion. Yeah. But I don't know if it warrants the buyout that happened. I think 36 copies were bought at an average price of $145. The day before that, 32 copies were bought at an average price of $103. Spiked all the way to $233, and now it's coming back down. I think this card could see play in other decks, but honestly, it seems like it takes too much setup to play. And next up, we have Arms Trafficker. 2 mana 1/4 Roar. Shuffle a random enchanted weapon into your deck. This card saw a price hike from 67 cents to 119. Ooh, 50 cents. That's crazy. But yeah, I have no really. It's the 2 mana 1/4 is a decent stat line. It's Marshwalker, but it costs 1 more mana, and the fact that you get to you shuffle it into your deck. You don't get to put it into your hand. Never mind. This card is ass. Sorry. It's 2 mana 1/4. Play this card. The body's all right. 4 health on a card is pretty good at 2 mana. Skeleton. That's what makes Skeleton Heavy so good in most decks. 1 strength leaves more to be desired. The fact that it's shuffling it into your deck makes it mediocre in my opinion. If this is into your hand, this would be a lot more better. English. This would be a lot better, but for its price, I don't know if the price hike is justified, but also could see play, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank y'all for tuning in to this rendition of Market Watch. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to like the channel or like the video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe share it, Share your thoughts in the comments as well. I'd love to build a community of people who are interested in this kind of stuff, and us interacting together and working together to just talk about the value of cards. I think that'd be very, very beneficial for the community and the game. So yeah, with that being said, thank y'all for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great night, and see you next time. Peace.